Hey, shalom, shalom, everybody. Welcome again to another session that we're going to be doing here this evening. And I pray that everybody has a good time with tonight's class. It's called Restoring the Fallen Tabernacle of David. Okay, once again, tonight's presentation is going to be entitled Restoring the Fallen Tabernacle of David. And I want to thank everybody once again for joining us here this evening, the congregation of Yashra'al, as we do another lesson. And tonight we're going to do something a little bit different, all right? A little different, meaning now is that we have a phone number, all right? We have a phone number that you can actually call in if you have any questions regarding the presentation that I'm going to be doing here tonight. And the number for that is 678-744-7493. Once again, if you have any questions regarding the presentation that's going to be done this evening, just simply call in at 678-744-7493. All right, so we're going to go ahead, Ms. Bakar, and we're going to go ahead and get tonight's class started or presentation. And we're going to start off like we do in all of the presentations that I do. We're going to start off first and foremost with the Father's Prayer. We're going to do it in English, and then we'll do it in Hebrew, all right? We'll do it in Hebrew. Our Father, which art in heaven, set apart be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Father, we pray that you give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us of our debts as we forgive our debtors. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us, Father, from all that is evil. For thine is the kingdom, and all esteem belongs to the Father through his Son, YAHUSHA HaMashiach. We say hallelujah. And now we're going to do it, Mishpachah, in Ibrit, in the Hebrew, as we begin our Shabbat. Abinu, Shabbat Shamayim, Yich Kudat Shemka, O Yich Barak Nakutka, Retsunka Yahiye Ishui, Ba Shamayim, U Ba Aretz, Ut Asain, Lakminu Tamedit, Umakulanu, Kata Atenu, Kaasher Enaknu, Mukhalim, U Al Tabi Adula Yide, Nasayon, U Sham Ranu, Makal Ra, Hallelujah, Amen. So once again, Mr. McCall, I want to thank everybody for joining us here tonight, the congregation of Yashra'al. And the show tonight is entitled Restoring the Fallen Tabernacle of David. Once again, it's entitled Restoring the Fallen Tabernacle of David. And if anybody have any questions, please call in at 678-744-7493. Once again, Ms. Bakar, if you can call in at 678-744-7493, because I want everybody to have a great, not a good understanding, I want everybody to have a great understanding of what we're going to be doing here this evening. And once again, I thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to join the congregation of Yashra'al. And we're about to do what we do, okay? So, Mishpachah, let's start off first is why I entitled this class here tonight, Restoring the Fallen Tabernacle of David. What I want to do, Mishpachah, is actually look into a topic that was brought to my attention. There are some of us that believe that the Mashiach, all right, Mashiach is actually sitting on the throne at this very present time, November the 10th, 2023. And I believe that there are prerequisites that are that has to happen or that we should be looking for in order to say that the Mashiach is actually sitting on the throne of David. Me personally, I don't believe that the Mashiach is actually sitting on the throne of David at this present moment. But again, I just want to bring my reasons why. And this is not to debate or argue anybody who actually believes it. I'm just sharing my personal reasons why. And I believe I have a wealth of scriptures to bring to the table to show that the Mashiach is not sitting on the tabernacle of David as we speak. All right, so let's go into tonight's presentation. And like I shared earlier, this is the question. Is the Messiah presently at this time now, Friday night, November the 10th, 2023 at 7:07 p.m., our Greco-Roman calculation of time. Is the Messiah presently sitting on the throne of David? And once again, I'm going to say it again. If anybody wants to chime in, please call in at 678-744-7493. Once again, that is 678-744-7493. Now, where are we today in the critical times that the scriptures speak of? All right, where are we today? Did the mighty one of Israel forget or abandon his promise he made? Watch this now. The promise that he made to Abram and David. The Abrahamic covenant and the Davidic covenant are key to understanding the times we live in. However, how is it that when you get 10 religious groups in one room to have this discussion, it results in 100 different perspectives? I truly believe the reason for so many discrepancies is due to reading how we're reading the text. And we should not be reading the text from a Western civilization ideology instead of with the heart and mind of the audience during the biblical era. And I often see that happening a lot of times in script when you ask certain brothers questions. And again, this is not to knock anybody. But again, what I like to do is I like to ask questions. And when I ask certain brothers questions, it's not that I don't have the answer. I just want to know what is the mindset of others and whether or not other individuals are on the same page as I, or maybe they have something to share with me that I might have missed. But making sure that we look at scriptures from a Hebraic perspective is going to be very important. I don't mind. Actually, I'm in favor of the Oxford and the Webster's dictionary, as long as it does not contradict, okay, the Hebrew definition to words, all right? Because as we know, there was no such thing as the Oxford, Webster, or any of these dictionaries that we're using today. So let's make sure that we keep heart and mind of the audience during the time of the biblical era. Okay, one of the most important scriptures that I'm finding, all right, because there's a ton of scriptures. I mean, you can go to the book of Daniel, and I've been working on 2, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12, as everybody have been noticing, like for the last 2 to 3 months. And I'm going to continue to work and unravel what's going on in the book of Daniel, because those books are extremely important. It lets us know where we're at in these last days here, and I believe that we should pay very close attention to that. Another dynamic scripture that I found is the book of Amos, the 9th chapter, verses 11 through 15. I want to tackle that a little bit here tonight. And another thing, Mr. Bakar, those of you that are watching, hit the like button, hit the share button. This also helps the algorithm in tonight's presentation, because I want this now to go out to as many people as possible so that we can continue to spread the good news that, that there was a death and resurrection of the Mashiach during the first century, and this is our Redeemer, and this is our claim that we're making here tonight, how we now have legal rights to the covenant again based upon the death and resurrection of the Mashiach. So let's take a look at Amos, the 9th chapter, verses 11 through 15. And I'm going to be looking at the NLT version. This is the New Living Translation. In comparison to now the King James Version, which I like to use, I like to use the Greek Septuagint. But what I also am in favor of is that when I go over script, I have to make sure that I'm looking at as many translations as possible so that I can get the best meaning of what those chapters and verses are actually saying. So once again, in the book of Amos, the 9th chapter, verses 11 through 15, we have in that day. So when we begin to look at when this was actually written, this was written by our good brother Amos now. So it says in that day. So it didn't happen at that particular time. So in that day means that this is something that would happen in the future. It says in that day I will restore. That word restore is very important because something was damaged. So in that day I will restore the fallen house of David. And this is the reason why I talked about the Davidic covenant a little bit earlier, because there was a disruption there was a disruption. Hold on for a minute, Mr. Picard. 1 second. There was a destruction of the house of David, and we need to know what does that actually mean Hebraically, where it says, "In that day I will restore the fallen house of David," and what does that actually mean? Then it goes on to say, because I want to make sure that I dissect this thing, Mishpachah, very carefully. In that day, which I believe is the Father, and the Father is using one particular mediator to do his bidding, and that is actually Yahushua HaMashiach. So in that day, I, the Father, will restore the falling house of David. I, the Father, working through the Mashiach, I will repair its damaged walls. From the ruins, I, the Father, will rebuild it and restore its former glory. So just to let you know right off the bat, we're talking about the reunification of northern and southern kingdom. We know that David wanted to build a house for the Father. But we know that David was a man of war, so he was not commissioned to do that. The commission to actually build the house was given to Solomon. And we know that after the death of Solomon, we have now the split with the side of the house, which now we have northern and southern kingdom. And I'll talk about it a little bit more, but this division actually happened prior to Solomon's reign. There began to be discrepancies on who will actually be able to sit on the throne next after the death of Saul. This is where tensions began to build in the house of David. But we know that it was still kept intact during the time of Solomon. And when Solomon died, this is what we see now, once again, the fall of the house of David, where we now have Rehoboam, who is actually now in control of southern kingdom, and Jeroboam now, who's actually in control of northern kingdom. But I'll talk about that a little bit more next week. So I will repair its damaged walls. From the ruins, I will rebuild it and restore its former glory. When there was there was no split. So I'm going to rebuild Israel where there is no split. So we're talking about what? Reunification. And Israel, okay, the 12 tribes of Israel will possess what is left of Edom. And I found that very interesting. It's talking about one particular tribe up front, which is Israel's brother. Okay, because we know the whole thing about the inheritance right and the discrepancy that was going on with that. There's two nations in your womb, Rebecca, and the older is going to serve the younger. So we know that whole story there that is outlined in the book of Bereshit, of the book of Genesis, the 25th chapter, the 25th verse. And so Israel will possess what is left of Edom, and all the nations I have called to be mine. And we're going to tackle that, all right, and see exactly what does that mean where it says, in all the nations I have called to be mine. Watch this now. The Lord has spoken, and he will do these things. The time which is future, the time will come, says the sovereign. Watch this now. When the grain and grapes will grow faster than they can be harvested. And so the question then becomes now is that when we begin to look at the prerequisites now that must take place at the point where the Mashiach is now actually sitting on the throne of David, sitting on the throne of David, these are some of the things that we should be looking for. One, there should be a reunification of northern and southern kingdom. Israel now should be possessing the remnants of Edom. One, there is no reunification of northern and southern kingdom. And we collectively as a people are not possessing the remnant of of Edom. That is not happening. Neither is there a time where we can count for where there was grain and grapes growing faster than they can be harvested. That never happened anywhere in our time. It did not happen during the Babylonian captivity, or actually when we came out of the Babylonian captivity. And then now we go into the Medo-Persian Empire captivity, because that was still a captivity. That did not happen under the Medo-Persians. It did not happen under the Greeks. It did not happen under the Romans. It did not happen under the 10 toes. And it's presently not our present state of condition where the grain and the grapes are growing faster than they can be harvested. Then the terrace vineyards on the hills of Israel will drip with sweet wine. That is not happening. Watch this now. It says, I, the Father, will bring my exiled people of Israel back from their distant lands. This means from their captivity. And that hasn't happened yet. Watch this now. It even gets more defined. It says, and they will rebuild their ruined cities. This means now Edom and also now the other nations now that survived this catastrophe that is going to happen. There will be a catastrophe now different from what happened in 70 AD. What we're looking to happen when we begin to understand Bible prophecy, what's about to happen next is going to now affect the whole planet Earth. Not just one center location, but once again, Mishpachah, this is going to affect the whole planet Earth. And they will rebuild their ruined cities and live in them again. That has not happened yet. Let's take a closer look at Amos, the 9th chapter, verse 12, through a couple of different lenses, right? Because I had made mention earlier that it is very important for us to look at different scripts so that we can actually now get the best translations in context to what's going on. I wanted to capitalize a little bit here on Amos, the 9th chapter, verse 12. And if you look at my screen here, I looked at the New American Standard Bible, or the NSAB, 1995, and it says that they may possess the remnant of Edom and all the nations who are called by my name. I said, wow, that's very interesting, because we know that there was a marriage at Mount Sinai. And the only people now that is called by the name of the Father is the nation of Israel. That marriage ceremony that took place at Mount Sinai was between the Father and the nation of Israel. So the King James Version now says pretty much about the same thing. It says that they may possess the remnant of Edom and all of the heathen which are called by my name. But what I found more interesting, because I have the English, the ERV, the ASV, we have the WEB, which is the Webster's revision of the King James Version Bible. We have the Darby's translation, 1890, which is a pretty good translation. We have Rotherham's Emphasized Bible, EBR, 1902, the Young's Literal Translation, the YLT, 1898 edition, and the Douay Rheims Catliner revision, DER, 1750. But the one that fits the context is the Rotherham's Emphasized Bible, EBR, 1902 edition, where it says, I'm going to let everybody know where I'm at. I'm at the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The 7th Bible version, Rotherham's Emphasized Bible, EBR 1902, fits the description of Amos 9 and 12 to a T, where it says, that they on whom my name have been called, which is the nation of Israel, may take possession of the residue of Edom and of all the nations, declareth YAHUAH, who executed this. So this is the proper rendering of Amos, the 9th chapter, verse 12. The people that is called by the name of the Father is the nation of Israel, and the nation of Israel will take the residue of Edom and all of the other nations as captives. And this is not my saying. This is not my saying here. This is the saying, and these are the words of the Father of YAHUAH, declareth YAHUAH, who executed this decree against all of the other nations now. It is now Israel's time to rule, and they now, once again, let me just read it to you again real quick. In that day, I will restore the fallen house of David. I, the Father, will repair its damaged walls. From the ruins, I will rebuild it and restore its former glory. And again, we're going to have to talk about that former glory and exactly what does that mean in detail. And Israel will possess what is left of Edom and all the nations I have called to be mine. And we already cleared up that discrepancy there. The Lord has spoken, and he will do this. The time will come, says the sovereign, when the grain and grapes will grow faster than they can be harvested. Then the terrace vineyards on the hills of Israel will drip with sweet wine. None of this has happened yet. I will bring my exiled people of Israel back from distant lands, and they will rebuild their ruined cities and live in them again. Question. Let's begin to unravel Amos, the 9th chapter, verses 11 through 15 a little bit more. Because what I wanted to do, I wanted to dissect this whole thing to its finest detail. All right, I wanted to go to the crumb of this so that there's no mistakes on whether or not the Mashiach is actually sitting on the throne of David. One of the words that I wanted to tackle here tonight, Mishpachah, is the word on eschatology. I had made mention now that slides 3 and 4 had not occurred yet. Once again, reading Amos, the 9th chapter, 11 through 15, slides number 3 and 4 did not happen yet. When you look at the word eschatology now, we have the word eschat. Okay, that Greek word that you see there, that word is eschat, and it means last. The word ology, okay, and so the word eschatology means a branch of knowledge or science, the study of the last days or end times. And everybody seems to be interested in what is actually going on. What is actually going on in these last days here? Because, like I said, we are living in some very critical times, extremely critical times, and everybody's trying to figure out now, what do we do from here? So let's see what is it that we actually do from here. Now, what I wanted to do, I wanted to take a look at another keyword and how it explains eschatology. And what I wanted to do was to take a look at Ephesians on the 1st chapter, verse 10. Okay, the book of Ephesians, the 1st chapter, verse 10. Watch how eschatology plays a very important role in these, what I'm calling last days, because there's been many last days. Some are believing, there was some that believe that the last day, if we keep it in context, the last day, looking at what was going on at that particular time, I'm sure the people thought that the days of Noah were the absolute last days, but it was the last day of that situation. And then we have other last days, but we want to know the operative word now. What is the definite article last day? Because today we can see that there were last days, and there was a last day even during 70 AD when we see that Jerusalem was ultimately destroyed, when we have now the destruction of Jerusalem. But watch this now. Ephesians, the 1st chapter, verse 10. It says that in the dispensation of the fullness of times, he, the Father, working through his emissary, the Mashiach, he might gather together in one all things. Watch this now. All things in Christ the Mashiach. Watch this now. Both which are in heaven, which is a place, and which is a conjunction, which are on earth, even in him. So we're looking for now a mirror image of a governmentship that is now actively present in heaven, and the planet Earth has to be a mirror of what is actually happening in heaven. My argument is that is not our present situation today. This is the reason why we do the prayer. Our Father, which art in heaven, set apart be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. On earth as it is in heaven. I refuse to believe, simply refuse to believe the chaos that we're seeing here on the planet Earth is the same type of destruction, headache, and havoc that is going on in heaven at this present time. I don't believe it. Do not believe it at all. So this is the reason why I would have to gracefully bow out this whole thinking that what we see on earth today is actually happening out in heaven. No. Nope, 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 no, no, no. Can't do it. Can't do it, cannot do it. Let's look at the word dispensation in Ephesians, the first chapter, verse 10. Because if I had a live audience here, I do have a live audience, but I'm just meaning now is that actually anyone that is actually here in my presence. Because I wanted to look at the word dispensation in Ephesians, the first chapter, verse 10. And let's read it one more time. Ephesians, the first chapter, verse 10. We're reading it this time now in the KJV. Again, I want to make sure that whenever I'm reading something, I get the best reading possible so that there's no misunderstandings. Ephesians, the first chapter, verse 10 in the KJV version. It says that in the dispensation of the fullness of times, times is plural, he might gather together in one all things in Mashiach, both which are in heaven and which are on earth, even in him. What I want everybody to do is to pay very close attention to the word dispensation. What does the word dispensation mean? Dispensation is a Greek word, and the Greek pronunciation of that word is oikonomia. Oikonomia. And it means house rules. Check that out. The word dispensation means house rules. There has to be rules within inside of the house. So the word dispensation means house rules. So let's go back again. That in the dispensation of the fullness of times, so that in the house rules, there's going to be house rules of the fullness of times, he might gather together in one all things in the Mashiach, both which are in heaven and which are on earth, even in him. Now, let's finish on with the definition. The definition that I got is from the Greek, and it's the Strong's number 3622. And it means now, in the Greek word study, transliteration, pronunciation, etymology, and grammar of the word, it means the management of a household or of household affairs. Specifically, the management, the oversight, the administration of others' property. The office of a manager or overseer, stewardship, administration, or dispensation. All right. And then we have in the Thayer's New Testament Greek English lexicon, we have the definition of administration of a household or a state, specifically a religious economy, dispensation, stewardship. So in this house that is being built, there must be house rules, the management of a household or of household affairs, specifically the management and oversight of administration of others' property, the office of a manager or overseer, stewardship, administration, and dispensation. That definition is so clear, and it should, I pray, excuse me, I pray that it's given us a better understanding of what's actually going on in the book of Ephesians, the first chapter, verse 10, because there's a whole lot that we have to unravel, and I want to make sure that everybody stays on point, because this should answer the question whether or not the Mashiach is actually sitting on the fallen tabernacle of David at this present moment. If this presentation that I'm doing tonight isn't the nail in the coffin, reasonably thinking, part 2, if it be the Father's will that I do it next week, that should definitely put the dirt over the coffin and settle this matter on whether or not the Mashiach is actually sitting on the throne of David or not. So let's continue on. So, Mishpachah, what is the biblical definition of dispensation? A dispensation refers to a period of time in which God or the Father deals with the human race in a distinct way. Once again, a dispensation refers to a period of time in which the Father deals with the human race in a distinct way. And more exact with this definition here, I'm going to throw in how the Father now is actually dealing with his chosen people. How he's actually dealing with his chosen people. Let's continue to unpack Ephesians, the first chapter, verse 10, by looking at the word fullness. The word fullness is, the Greek word is pleroma. Pleroma. And it means complete in the sense of coming to an end. Once again, it means complete in the sense of coming to an end. The reason why I'm going through this vocabulary lesson, Mishpachah, is because it's important that when I do my classes, I try to be as thorough as possible. The reason why sometimes I might go into hiding for a couple of weeks is not that I don't want to do a lesson. It's just that I'm trying to make sure that the bread that I give the sheep is correct. There's no problems with it. I've done thorough investigations with it to make sure that I'm not blaspheming the Father's word. And if there ever comes a point where I made a mistake with something, I simply made a mistake, and it is now my responsibility to correct it. That is my responsibility, okay, as a shepherd over the vineyard. So when it talks about, again, the word fullness is the Greek word pleroma, and it means complete in the sense of coming to an end. So when we read Ephesians, the first chapter, verse 10, we've already broke down the word dispensation, because the verse reads that in the dispensation of the fullness of times, and we're talking about the word fullness, so that in the dispensation of the fullness of times, he might gather together in one all things in the Mashiach, both which are in heaven and which are on earth, even in him. And we broke down the word fullness, which means now complete in the sense of coming to an end. Let's continue. That is now, Mishpachah, the Greek number 4138. Once again, 4138. And it means, in the Greek word study, transliteration, pronunciation, etymology, and grammar of the word, that which is or has been filled. A ship, in as so much as it is filled with sailors, rowers, and soldiers. In the New Testament, this is the one that fits our definition and what I'm trying to do here tonight. In the New Testament, or the Besorah, or the good news, the body of believers as that which is filled with the presence, power, agency, riches of the Father and of his Mashiach, that which fills or which a thing is filled. And then we have the second definition of those things which a ship is filled, freight and merchandise, sailors, oarsmen, soldiers, to be completeness or fullness of time, fullness, abundance, fulfilling, or keeping. Another great definition that I found was in the Thayer's, the New Testament Greek English lexicon, repletion or completion. That is, what fills or what is filled, which is put to, what is put into, fill up, piece that fill up, filling, fulfilling, fullness. So what does all of this mean? So what does dispensation and fullness means in combination according to Ephesians 1 verse 10? I'm going to wait until the screen pops over. Mr. McCarr, I want everybody to follow along. Okay, there we are here. I just wanted to make sure that everybody was keeping up because I see that there's a little delay here. So the question is, so what does dispensation and fullness mean in combination according to Ephesians, the first chapter, verse 10? The dispensation of the fullness of time refers to the final dispensation, or what we would call the final time period on this earth. And I'm not talking about the earth is going to blow up and go kapooey. That's not what I'm talking about. When I say the final time or the period on this earth, where we begin to look at the book of Daniel, the second chapter, verses 34 to 37, where it begins to talk about there was a stone that was cut out without hands, and it struck the colossal figure in that government. Meaning now is that there was no more remnants of the Babylonians, the Medo-Persian Empire, the Greeks, the Romans, and the 10 toes. All of that is done. So that period of earth has come to an end, and then it makes mention that that same stone became a mighty government and it filled the earth. We're not talking about heaven. It filled the earth. I don't see how anyone can get around the fact that that stone became a great mountain. So it grew. If it was once a stone and it became, which means through a process of time, it became a great mountain and filled the earth. So the dispensation of the fullness of time refers to the final dispensation, or what we will call the final time period on this earth. Mr. McCarr, the word dispensation is so, there's a lot to it. But I'm just going to bring out just a few things that what I'm talking about when I talk about dispensation, because dispensation would have to also be centered around the word time, T-I-M-E, as it says here in Ephesians 1 and 10, the dispensation of the fullness of time. What time are we talking about? There were a lot of dispensations of time, meaning now there was a dispensation of time from Adam to the fall of Adam, from the fall of Adam to Noah, from Noah to Abraham, from Abraham to Moses, from Moses to the Mashiach, and from the second coming of the Mashiach, because the scriptures also talk about 1,000-year millennium reign. All of these things need to be answered. So, don't you find it interesting where, for example, we have Adam in the garden living a righteous life inside of the enclosed garden. And we know that there was life outside of the enclosed garden because when Adam was kicked out of the garden, it made mention of the condition of vegetation outside of the Garden of Eden. It makes mention inside of the Garden of Eden, everything was plenteous, everything was beautiful. But outside of the garden, the vegetation now was terrible. Everything was growing now with thistles and briars, and everything was hard labor. So I say this now is that when Adam was kicked out of the garden, the rules changed. Meaning now is that the Father now has to deal with Adam on a different level because he's now looking at the fallen state of Adam and how does Adam now get back into the good graces with the Father. How do we make amends with all of this here? And then you now have a dispensation of time where the Father got fed up with the situation. So we have now from Adam to the fall of Noah, where we now have the Noah flood. Because there's also a Noahic covenant. And this now where the Father is fed up now, and so he cleanses the earth of all of the wickedness and things like that. And so he now establishes rules and regulations now with Noah. Things didn't get any better. Then we have a dispensation of time when we have now Abraham, where we now have the Abrahamic covenant, which I now find interesting now because we see with all of this now, with the fall of Adam, we now have the stages being set now. How do we get righteousness back on the planet Earth again? So even through Adam, we see now the beginning stages of how to build a nation. Because from Adam now to Noah to Abraham, we're talking about the building blocks to the nation of Israel. Then from Abraham to Moses. And we know that was another set of dispensation where we have a promise being made, a covenant being made. Well, actually, the covenant being made with Abraham in Genesis, the 15th chapter. And then we have another situation where a covenant was actually made where there's now a marriage that took place with the bridegroom and the bridegroom being the Mashiach, the bridegroom being the Mashiach, the bride being the nation of Israel. I hope I didn't get that twisted. And then we have Moses to the Mashiach. Israel didn't recognize the time of her coming. And at that time, Israel is now under the Levitical order. The Mashiach now changes now because of the dispensation of time, where now we're working towards what is being now introduced to us is the Melchizedek order. The Melchizedek order. So now the Levitical order now is no longer in play because the Mashiach is our high priest. So what am I saying with all of this, Mishpachah? I pray that I'm not confusing anybody. It's just that there is so much in the book of Amos, the 9th chapter, verses 11 through 15, and there's so much that's going on also with the book of Ephesians now, the 1st chapter, verse 10. Watch this. Even inside of your relationships with your Ishas, even with your children, dispensation and time changes over a period of time. When your child is a newborn, there's certain rules and regulations that must take place in order to keep the young baby healthy. So the baby drinks, the baby's breastfed. And then after that, that dispensation of time comes to an end where the baby begins to eat solids. That dispensation of time ends where now the baby is able to walk, talk, becomes an adult, and all these things here. So there must be a change in dispensation as things mature. It's not that you're doing away with anything. It's just that you're adding to it. That's the reason why this is off the, well, it's not off the topic, but even inside of your relationships that you're having now with your Ishas, and the Ishas with the Ish, but more so the Ish having with, he's dealing with his Isha. A lot of times I hear certain sisters say, well, that's not what you told me from the beginning. And now you're changing. Well, babe, no, I'm not changing. Based upon what is going on in our present situation, our relationship, I'm adding to the household or bringing more information into our agreement because situations are changing. There's no way in the world you can have a relationship and things stay the same for the next 40 years of your in your relationship. That is not possible. As you grow, things change, and you must adapt to the climate that's surrounding you. If you don't, you will fall. And I'll leave that there. Now, at the final, and this is the operative word here, at the final dispensation, all things are made new. And this is what everyone here tonight, at the sound of my voice, is waiting for. We're waiting for the fact when everything is made new. So, we had talked about the word dispensation. We got a definition for that. We got a definition for fullness. Now we want to look at another definition. So, at the final dispensation, all things are made new. God is going to gather together in one all things in Christ, or who we know as the Mashiach. Once again, the Father is going to gather together in one all things in or to the Mashiach Christ. So let's read Ephesians, the first chapter, verse 10 again, just to make sure that everybody is following along. That in the dispensation of the fullness of times, he might gather together, and we're going to look at that word, gather together in one, all things in the Mashiach, both which are in heaven and which are on earth, even in him. There must be righteousness on the planet Earth. The earth is the Father's footstool. The way that things are going today, it cannot continue this way. If it was to continue this way, nothing will exist. And the Father did not create the earth to be uninhabitable. He simply did not. So how we read scriptures is going to be extremely important, because if we take things out of context, we're going to have a world of problems. Let's read on, and we're almost done. Now, to gather together in one, what does that mean in context? Once again, what does that mean in context to Ephesians, the first chapter, verse 10? I'm going to read the definition. I'm going to read Ephesians, the first chapter, verse 10 again. That in the dispensation of the fullness of times, he might gather together in one all things in the Mashiach, both which are in heaven and which are on earth, even in him. So we want to look at now to gather together in one. That word to gather together in one is kef al-ai omhi, and this is a compound word. To gather together in one in the Greek is kef al-ayon, and it means to bring everyone and everything under the submission of one person, which is the Mashiach, and to gather around him. I want to see if you guys are really paying attention. To gather together in one in the Greek is kef al-ai om-ahi, is a compound word. In one, or together in one is kef al Ayon, and it means to bring everyone and everything under the submission of one person and to gather around him. So those of you now that are paying very close attention, you must notice that, guess what? Kassad did not give us the definition of the word ana. It reads in the Greek, ana kef al I-E, om I-He, compound word, kef al ayon. Why did Kassad leave out the word ana? Once again, if anybody have any questions on what I'm bringing out this evening, the number that you should be calling in at is 678. Again, 678 744 7493. Once again, 678 674 7498. Shalom, shalom, my sister Sharon. Shalom, shalom, Mikael. It is a pleasure to have my peoples here with us this evening. Let's move on. Let's take now another look at the words to gather together in one again. To gather together in one, I said again, it means ana kef al I-E, om I-He. It's a compound word. Kef al ayon. It means to bring everyone and everything under the submission of one person to gather around him. But the word ana means again. So don't you find that interesting? The word ana or ava, the pronunciation is ana, it means again. Again implies that it was like this once before. So what we're actually waiting for, and this is what, this should be the correct contextual rendering of to gather together in one. The prefix ava. So the word ava is a prefix, and it implies that there was a time once before when everyone and everything on the earth was under the submission of Jesus, who we know as Yahushua HaMashiach. And the reason why I have Jesus, because there's a lot of people that listen to these teachings. And I use the word Jesus just to help them as in the dispensation of time. As babes, they grow as we have grown, where we know that this is actually now in Hebrew now, Yahushua HaMashiach, but everything now must be brought under the submission of Yahushua HaMashiach and gathered around him. So that, again, that word ana or ava implies that there was once a time before when everyone and everything on the earth was under the submission of the Mashiach. So this is the question. When was there a time when everything was under the submission of Yahushua HaMashiach and everything was centered around him? When was that? And this would be the time, not putting any pressure on anybody, but the question is, when was it when everything was in submission? Everyone and everything now was in submission to the Mashiach. The phone number is 678-744-7493. Once again, 678-744-7493. When was it when everything was under the submission of Yahushua HaMashiach? If you don't want to call in, listen, just leave a chat. Leave a text message. When was it that there was a time when everything was under the Mashiach? Paul is speaking to the Ephesians. Paul is saying that at the final dispensation, all right? Because even in Acts, the 2nd chapter, the disciples of the Mashiach had asked, have you now come at this time to restore the kingdom to Israel? What they were asking the Mashiach with proper understanding is that, have you come now at this time to sit on the throne of David? Because with the sitting on the throne of David, we're talking about now the reunification of both the northern and southern kingdom. And then now, when the Mashiach is actually sitting on the throne of David, there are things that must happen. Israel is now in power. Israel is possessing now the remnants of Edom and all of the other nations. We're talking about a time where Israel now is building houses, and Israel is actually living in those houses where nobody is now taking their property away from them anymore. We're talking about a time when the Mashiach is actually sitting on the throne of David, where righteousness reigns supreme. Righteousness reigns supreme. We're talking about a time now where things that are planted, and it comes time to harvest what is planted. The harvest or the fruit is coming up so fast and in such abundance. When it comes time to reap, there's an overfill of corn, wheat, watermelon, pomegranates, oranges, apples, potatoes. All of these things now, there's such an abundance because the land is now able to yield her increase. That is not happening now. Everything that we're eating now, everything that we're eating is processed. GMO. The soil is contaminated. There is no such thing as clean eating. I'm talking about according to the definition of Scripture. No such thing. The ground is cursed according to Genesis when Adam was kicked out of the garden. We are all dying slowly. Now, back to the slideshow. Paul is saying that at the final dispensation, and again, the final dispensation, everything's going to return to the way it was before the fall. The fall of who? The fall of Adam. The fall of Adam. What is Yashra'al, which is Paul trying to get across to the Ephesians and to us today? Let's look at Genesis, the first chapter, verse 30. This is an NLT version. And I have given every green plant as food for all the wild animals. Huh? We are not supposed to be carnivores. Huh? It says that even the wild animals, their diet is supposed to be every green plant. If things are going to be restored back to the way that it was originally, how is it that we can say that David is sitting, the Mashiach is sitting on the throne of David when we don't see things being restored back to the way that it was in the book of Genesis? How do you clear that up? How? That would take a lot of magic tricks. That would take a lot of waving of the magical wand to make me believe that the Mashiach is actually sitting on the throne of David now, right now. It's impossible. Once again, let me just go back here. Let me just go back. Let's go back here. Because I want everybody to see what is going on right here. Ephesians, the first chapter, verse 10. It says, that in the dispensation of the fullness of times he might bring, or he might gather together in one all things in the Mashiach, both which are in heaven and which are on earth. And we broke down the words dispensation, fullness, gathered together in one all things in the Mashiach. And then we went forward, broke down all of this stuff here. All of this we broke down. And then we asked, what is it that Shaul is trying to say? And the key word that a lot of people miss is the word anah. So this is the reason why a person can't tell me that language is not important. You just can't, it doesn't make sense. The Hebrew language and understanding the Greek language and taking your time and dissecting every little thing is going to be very important, because the word avah means again. And again implies that it was like this once before. There's no getting away around it unless a person just wants to be stubborn. Because that's what it says. And this is what we must understand now, or understand. What is it that Paul is trying to share with the Ephesians? Paul is saying that at the final dispensation, everything's going to return to the way that it was before the fall. One more time, because we'll be done in 5 minutes. And notice, too, that I didn't go through a whole lot of scripts. And the reason why, because I wanted to make this thing as easy as possible. Genesis 1:30 in the NLT version. And the King James Version is saying the same thing. And I've given every green plant as food for all the wild animals. The birds of the sky are supposed to eat green plants. The small animals are supposed to eat green plants. The scurry along the ground, the snakes, worms, things that crawl upon his belly, all those things are supposed to now eat all green plants. Everything that has life, and that is what happened. We are not supposed to be, I know this is going to be an argument, but according to Scripture, we are not supposed to be carnivores. Not. This happened after the fall. And we're now supposed to be moving towards, this oneness in the Mashiach, this oneness in the Father, because the Mashiach is in the Father, and the Mashiach came in the name of the Father. So he's looking to gather all in one. So the proper diets is supposed to be now. We're supposed to be we're supposed to eat herbs. It's what we're supposed to be eating, not carnivores. Listen to this. Oh, let me just read on. Because this is going to get interesting, because I have so much to unravel. But what's happening, Mr. Bakar, here tonight is that I'm going to save some stuff for next week, because I have some napalm bombs to drop. These are not atom bombs I'm going to be dropping next week. These are hydrogen bombs. Hydrogen. All right. So let's look on with this presentation. In Isaiah, the 11th chapter, verses 6 through 9, in the NLT version, New Living Translation, it says, in that day is a future prophecy. It's eschatology. In that day, it says the wolf and the lamb will live together. That's not happening today. If you put a lamb in front of a wolf, guess what? The lamb's heart rate is going to skyrocket. The wolf is going to eat the lamb. So when everything is returned back to its natural form, in that day, the wolf and the lamb will live together. The wolf would eat the herbs, the plants in the field, not the other lamb. And the lamb now do what it's naturally doing, eat herbs. The leopard will lie down with the baby goat And another thing too now is that if you was to actually put a goat in front of a leopard, we already know what the outcome would be. So when everything now is restored to its proper place and position, where the Mashiach now is actually sitting on the throne of David, the leopard would lie down with the baby goat, the calf and the yearling would be safe with the lion, and a little child will lead them all. The cow will graze near the bear, the cub and the calf will lie down together. The lion will eat hay like a cow. The baby will play safely near the hole of a cobra. Yes, a little child will put his hand in a nest of deadly snakes without harm. Watch this now. Watch this now. How can you get around this? The Mashiach is not sitting on the throne of David. Nothing will hurt or destroy in all my holy mountain. Mishpachah, please go to Daniel, the 2nd chapter. I don't have it here on my presentation slide, but go to Daniel, the 2nd chapter, because I want you to follow along with me, because I don't want you to think that I'm making this up. Daniel, the 2nd chapter, 34, because I'm pulling it up myself here. Um, 34 and 35. Daniel, the 2nd chapter, verses 34, 35. And I want us to pay very close attention where it says, nothing will hurt or destroy in all my holy mountain. Daniel 32, 34. Thou sawest till that a stone was cut out without hands, which smote the image upon his feet, that were of iron and clay, and brake them to pieces. Then was the iron, the Romans, the clay, because we had a situation where the iron became mixed with the clay, the brass, and we know the brass to be who? The brass was the Greeks, the silver was who? The Medo-Persian Empire, and the gold was the Babylonians. That whole government system was broken to pieces together. It became like the shaft of the summer threshing floor, and the wind carried them away. That whole political system came to an end. An end. Because today's society now is operating off of the remnants of the Babylonians, the Medo-Persians, the Greeks, and the Romans. In America, based upon the symbol, the eagle, America is an extension of Rome. I don't see how that's hard to understand. I really don't. But it makes mention now that a stone was cut out without hands, struck the colossal figure, let's read on, and carried them away, that no place was found for them, and that stone that smote the image became a great mountain. A great mountain? What did we read that at? We read that where I'm reading at here now, nothing will hurt or destroy in all my holy mountain. This is the same mountain that we're talking about that filled the whole earth. The same mountain. When this government is set up, nothing is going to hurt or destroy in all my holy mountain. For as the waters fill the sea, so the earth will be filled with people who know the Lord, the sovereign. Isaiah, the 33rd chapter, verse 24. This is the last slide here. The people of Israel, Kwam Yashra'al, as we say, Kwam Yashra'al. The people of Israel will no longer say, we are sick and helpless, for the Lord will forgive their, who is Israel's, sins. When the Mashiach is sitting on the throne, there would be no such thing as high blood pressure, diabetes, cancer, what's that, that nerve pain, I forgot the name of this nerve pain. I get it every once in a while. But Mr. what I'm saying here now is that there would be no such thing as sickness or sharp pains running down your leg every once in a while. Sciatica, yeah. There would be no nerve sciatica with bulging discs and all this other craziness. None of that. Israel would no longer say we are sick and helpless, for the sovereign will forgive their sins. High blood pressure, diabetes, breast cancer, prostate cancer, all of this stuff here is a result of sin. And I'm not trying to hurt anybody's feelings. Miscarriages, all this death here is not going to happen when the Mashiach is actually sitting on his throne. So, Mishpachah, I pray that this lesson gives you an understanding that the Mashiach is not sitting on his throne, and that there's still more to this here. There's still more. So right now, Mishpachah, the Cash App, if anybody feels inspired by the Ruach HaKodesh to send a donation to help out with the congregation. We're supposed to be moving into our new location in the middle of December, all right? And I just want to also give thanks to our More Eliyahu for doing a great job in setting up a new place for us to actually tabernacle at. I can't thank him enough for that. He's a very, very great brother. The work that he does for the congregation is, wow. Sometimes it goes without saying. He really does a lot. So if you can do that, $ Kasada Ba for donations and free will offerings. And the phone number to call in now is 678-744-7493. You can call in with your questions regarding tonight's topic, all right? I don't want to talk about the calendar. I'm not talking about the distance from Earth to the moon and whether man went to the moon or not, or whether the Earth is flat or round or circle. I'm not talking about that tonight. I'm talking about the topic that's at hand. Is the Mashiach sitting on the throne of David? Okay. So I don't see any questions in the live chat. All right, so I guess that everybody is told me yo. So, Mishpachah, what I'm going to be doing, I'm going to be ending tonight's broadcast. I pray that everybody got something out of the lesson here tonight. And until the next time, Mishpachah, I'm going to say Shabbat Shalom. Shalom, shalom. I pray that the Father keeps you safe and sound. Until the next time, be blessed. Shalom, shalom.